Hi, everyone. We're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I am Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
And you are very, very welcome to our channel. We are social scientists with PhDs who are empathy educators and obsessed with culture, both popped and lived, in order to have conversations about empathy, inclusivity, and all of the other tangential things related to that. We talk about culture to analyze it in order to learn more about empathy, and we do that with everything from conversations about race in Bridgerton to the latest round of Oscar nominees and everything in between.
This video is a part of our Colonizers World Tour series. We're up to Chapter 2, looking at countries that aren't quite officially colonized, but have weird, adjacent protectorate relationships to them. And if you watched our 101 video yesterday, you know that we are talking this week about Afghanistan. And our piece of culture and art produced by Afghani people in Afghanistan is the 2003 movie Osama, which was the directorial debut of, she scrolls for dramatic effect, Siddiq Barmak. It was the first film to be made in Afghanistan after the fall of the Taliban. Previous to that, all filming had been banned. The actors are all amateurs and from the city of Kabul, and the director was very intentional in just finding Kabul residents to enact this film, and I think it certainly shows. And he was helped by leading Iranian director Mohsen Makhmalbaf, apologies, I'm not great with these names, who gave him $100,000 and cameras to help make the film. So that's a pretty cool story. It was submitted for the Best Foreign Language Film for the 2004 Oscars. It is currently available on Amazon Prime for the low price of $3 to rent, which is really quite a bargain. And it is in Dari, I would assume, and perhaps I think
I think the Amazon X-Ray said Dari Persian with subtitles.
With subtitles, yeah. There is some Arabic, I think, spoken by maybe some of the Taliban, and might be some Pashto as well. IMDb was unclear, but I think the majority of it is in Dari Persian, which is the main language of Afghanistan. So that's the facts on Osama. It is the story of a young girl who, in order to make money for her family to try and go out and work for her mother and her grandmother, dresses as a boy and pretends to be a boy, because the Taliban's heavily restricted on what women can and can't do. They certainly can't work outside the home. And so it's a very precarious story of her life over a period of weeks, trying to avoid the Taliban, trying to pretend to be a boy, and spoiler alert, not succeeding at it. Her father was killed in the Russian war and her uncle was killed in the Afghan war. And so there is no male family member to protect these women or to help them financially in this new society. And so that's really the guiding principle of the film. Dr. Kristen, how did you feel about Osama?
I didn't enjoy it at all.
No.
Didn't have a good time with this one. It and also just legitimately, it's not a great made film.
No,
and so I'm not surprised it wasn't picked up for the Best Foreign Language.
Right.
However, I mean, I think one of the reviews that we're going to link in the Google Doc, the Afghan resource Google Doc, is called it raw. And when I read that word, I was like, that's it. That's the word. That's what this is.
Yeah.
It pulls no punches.
Zero.
It does not care about how comfortable the audience is at all, ever. And it shouldn't. That's the appropriate choice. And I mean, I had to pause it twice to bend over in pain. I have never felt more privileged to be born where I was born and also be a woman. The scene where the mother is crying, like, what am I supposed to do? All the men have died, like, destroyed me on a level I wasn't even prepared for.
Yeah, what did she say? Like, I wish God hadn't made women.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could not fathom having that thought and meaning it, and how horrible your life circumstances have to be to have that thought.
I mean, even just the exhaustion of like the mom's a doctor.
Yeah.
And the exhaustion of having to put on different clothes and have different things and have a man in the room that she could lie about and all of that just to do her job. I mean, it really reminded me of Handmaid's Tale. And in the second season where we like somebody needs Serena needs surgery, or the first season or whatever, and Serena needs to see a doctor, and there's all that kind of back and forth, like just to do the job that you've trained for is illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And Handmaid's Tale is hypothetically fictional, and this was not. And so that is a reminder that Handmaid's Tale is potentially prophetic if we're not careful. The other thing that really got me, and this is just me and Dr. Aaron both experienced this, I'll call us out. We are so programmed to Western storytelling that there was so many times I expected her to get rescued, and so many times I expected a happily ever after for her. And what it just really drove down for me is that happily ever afters are a privilege, and that a lot of humans around the world never experience. And this is a film that wanted you to know what life was like, not what life could be. Like, there is no aspirations in this film. There is just, this is a documentary made about fictional people as stand-ins for real people. I mean, so she dresses like a boy, doesn't work out, she gets caught, she ends up getting sold in marriage. She is 12.
Yeah.
Maybe
12 or 13, I think.
That's the story. That's the story. But it spends a half an hour with each of those sentences and unpacks each of them. The way that she's found out at the boys' work camp where they were all rounded up to go be Taliban soldiers at the particular place they were, is that she gets her period. And that's humiliating enough, but I've never been afraid to get my period and that it was going to get me killed. And like I got my period in a railway station in Varanasi, India. And that was dangerous for sure. I felt that I was potentially going to be attacked because I was very vulnerable in taking care of that situation. Also, rats could smell things, and it was not great. At no point in time did I fear for my actual life. And I was 25 when that happened, 26 when that happened. I wasn't a 12-year-old girl crying for my mother. And that's where I had to hit pause, and I just doubled over and couldn't grapple with how different our lives were and how I've done nothing to deserve that.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all seen so much, especially in the United States, so much footage of the war in Afghanistan, certainly since U.S. intervention in 2001. Two? Yeah, after 9/11.
After 9/11, yeah. I still think it might have been, I have a memory that it was my sophomore year, so it was 3, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. Iraq was 2003 as well. It's hard to keep track of all the U.S.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Iraq is what I remember being on spring break in my sophomore year. I don't remember when we went into Afghanistan. You are correct.
I would imagine pretty quickly after 9/11. But, you know, we do get desensitized, especially in the U.S. media, to footage of conflict, especially, I mean, I think regardless of your color, but I think especially for Black and brown folks in developing countries or conflict ridden countries. But this movie kind of went beyond that. It didn't feel like a media footage of a war film. And so a lot of times what we don't see in that media is the humanization of the people that we're watching run for their lives or be arrested and detained. And, you know, for that, I think Osama is valuable for just being raw and honest. I think raw is such a great description. This is what life was like for women when the Taliban came, and for young men and boys. And like she meets, there's this boy throughout the movie. He's like the first person we see on screen. Espandi is his name. And he quickly catches on that she's pretending to be a boy because he's seen her as a girl very recently. And so when she's brought to the camp and they're all at this like Taliban work camp, he protects her because the other boys start to suspect that she might be a girl, and he protects her. And so like him crying as she was being chased by all the other boys after she got her period, after being hung in a well, was really hard to watch as well. That, and a reminder that, yeah, it was really, the Taliban regime is exceptionally repressive against women, but that also has an impact on young boys and men. It has an impact on everybody. So I thought it did a good job of that. But I mean, it is just one of those films that shows you what happens in a society when women are that oppressed and when they don't have a male relative to protect them, and how precarious and volatile and vulnerable that situation is, how violent that situation often is. And her whole life was destroyed. Her whole family was destroyed within a matter of weeks.
I was impressed too about, just to come back to your point about men, how quickly they all had to start lying. And I think about the tenets of Islam. And I think about that we know that Afghanistan is a deeply religious place. And that we have evidence in this movie that everyone we encountered who was not a part of the Taliban was also a devout Muslim and took their faith very seriously. And honesty is a major part of all Abrahamic religions. And I've heard some things that, like, Islam doesn't care about honesty as much. And that just kind of honestly feels a little bit like racism to me, and not honesty and not truth. Because as I've read the Quran, I don't see evidence of that. If that is a theological thing, please correct me. But I was like there's two male characters in particular that have to lie to protect these women. And that this, I'm going to say it, perversion of Islam, which is what the Taliban practices, this perversion of Islam also forced devout Muslims to compromise their own ethic. And that piece is not something we investigate all that often.
No.
And I remember after 9/11, my Muslim friends, we didn't have Facebook then, so I'm sure their Facebook statuses, would have been things like, not all Muslims, this isn't us. But lots of conversations around, I don't know how to be publicly Muslim right now, because the presence of this makes it difficult to be Muslim. And they were all in the United States. I cannot fathom. There was something passed over one of the gentlemen's faces at one point, and that was the other time I had to pause the movie and just sit there and be like, this man loves Allah with his whole being. And the compromise, like how much it must destroy him to watch what is being done, and like all of those kind of things. It's a great reminder as well of the diversity of a faith system, that the leading voices in a faith system may or may not reflect the personalized, lived religious experience of each individual people. And what was done, like I said, I'm not a Quranic scholar on any level. I read it and found it to be beautiful in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's not my faith, but I find absolutely no Quranic justification for what was being done there and what is being done in the 70% of Afghanistan that is currently controlled by the Taliban. And if you've watched a lot of our channels, you may have noticed that both of us are a lot quieter when we're talking about Afghanistan. And I hope that that translates what we really feel is a grief that we're having trouble processing of how to be global citizens when this reality is happening. And I hope that you hear that in the respect in which it's meant to be given, but we don't know how to be global citizens right now. This is real. This has been a hard week to sit with. And we're heading into Yemen, which is going to be an even harder one. This colonialism feels different to me than the other stuff we've talked about. This grief feels heavier. And it could be because I'm very, very aware of ISIS and the Taliban and their activities in that part of the world that we have no control over. And the lived experience that may look very identical to this, even though we celebrated the fall of the Taliban.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that we had both spoken a lot softer in this video because it never gets easier to watch these things, even as desensitized as I am, and I know I am, and I know you are too, to watching these things unfold.
Yeah, we joke that I watch documentaries about genocide for kicks and giggles. Like, I'm not affected by a whole lot, honestly, just because of my work and the things I've seen and the places I've been. It does take quite a lot to pierce my well-constructed armor. And this movie did.
Yeah. You know, and I cry at grocery store openings, but I did not cry at this movie. Because it was so expected. And you know what we said in our 101 video yesterday, like, we didn't learn anything new about Afghanistan, really, culturally, societally, that we didn't already know. We just learned that it was as bad as we think it is on a lot of these issues, and certainly was that bad for women, and still is, I'm assuming, in Taliban controlled parts of the country. And it's never an easy thing to sit with. But we hope if you chose to watch Osama with us, you got something out of it. Wouldn't say enjoyed it, but learned from it. Built up some of those empathy skills. And we're staying in the deep end of things. And next week, we'll be finishing up chapter 2 of our Colonizers World Tour by spending the week learning and speaking about Yemen. So we hope to see you then, or on whatever next video you choose to watch from us. So take care, everybody.
And just a brief announcement before we forget, if you are somebody who likes our book reviews, know that we have switched our book reviews to a new channel to be able to group them and also flood the channel a little bit more with content because we read a lot. So if you are interested in listening to our book reviews, of which there will be continual books about Afghanistan and about Yemen and about all of these things, please find Abby Research Reads here on the YouTubes, and it'll be linked in the show notes below. And we'd love to see you on both channels. So we'll see you next week for Yemen, and hopefully over on Abby Research Reads.
Take care.